Hello and welcome back. My name is Douglas Grummins and this is part 7 of the reading of the book Wheels. Thanks for joining me again, and we'll continue on gathering more insight from John Lennon's song Watching the Wheels. So once again, thank you for joining me again. I know some parts of my book get a little off subject, but I always try to bring it back home and remind you of why we're bringing up the subject in the first place. But anyway, back to the text. After hearing about a horrific incident in the Middle East where militants butchered over 30 young students while they were in school, a friend on social media site said that we should just kill these butchers. And I responded back by saying we cannot keep using hate to fight hate. Then another friend posted, well, these people are so far gone, there is no helping them. I reflected on what I said, and it sounded a little cold, so let me explain. We all have a hard side. And our hard side, our logical side, says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So these extremists should be dealt with the same brutal punishment that they dished out. People killing children are cowards, and I agree they are so far gone. Yet we all have our soft side, and we try to understand why these militants go on doing what they do. Is there so much hate towards those who do not agree with them that they have to resort to murdering? Then there is the man of the Tao, who has insight and hindsight, who says that after 2,000 years of people killing people, continuous war after war, nothing has changed. In fact, it has gotten worse, if you ask me. Humanity has actually gotten worse. We have found new ways to kill by using technologically advanced weapons and bombs. We have to ask ourselves, is this what we call civilization? There has to be a better way. How can we as a civilized planet change? Some believe we can wipe out the extremists by abolishing their faith. If people wipe out Muslims, then they would just come back as some other form of extremist. Islam is not the problem. The other day, 200 Muslims guarded a church, a Christian church in the Middle East, so Christians could attend a service. I have several Islamic friends, and they have told me that they love what I write, and I am not a Muslim. Nor am I a Christian or a Buddhist. I left these nests so long ago. As I see it, there is only one way to change this world, and that is by bringing more understanding into the world. Just by being made aware that you are living in a nest, you will be able to drop it. These nests we call Christian or Muslim have walls. These walls are made by the rules set forth in the books they follow. The differences between an extremist and a moderate are many. One of the biggest differences is the extremist has, in a way, capped off their faith. No new life can be added to the religion. The Christian extremist believes that the Bible is the only book to follow, and they have capped off their religion. Nothing can be added to the Bible, and nothing can be taken away. You read Revelations 22:18 and 19. These are ideas of a Bronze Age God, and they are outdated. Even in the midst of religions being outdated, like Buddhism has gotten outdated, but it's been given an update with what we call Zen. Christianity is being updated by those realizing what they term as Christ consciousness. This term comes about by mixing Eastern thought with Western idealism, a sort of compromise, you might call it. Islam differs in this aspect. It cannot be changed or added to. Muslims have capped off their faith by saying Hazrat Muhammad was the last prophet, and the Quran is the final message. And in a way, many religions have put an invisible lid over their nest, and no one is allowed to fly out. By flying out, I mean opening their hearts and their minds and realize God is alive and evolving through us. We are the unrealized portions of God's existence. God cannot be realized without the human form. No other animal can realize God. We are unique in that way. Friedrich Nietzsche has said God is dead, and he has a good argument because the door from where he looked out came from old Judaic conditioning. And life has to stay new and fresh. And with a Bronze Age God, things became stale. 2,000 years ago, these words were alive and fresh, and religions have sealed the door shut, and they have put an invisible lid over their nest, and there is only one escape, and that is by death. In a way, you commit spiritual suicide by eliminating anything new or fresh from your spiritual belief system. Actually, every belief system will have a life, and that life will depend on how the words in the text hold true. If your words are proven to be not true, the religion or portion of that religion will die. People no longer pray to Zeus because his time and the fear of the Greek mythology came and went. Jesus is a little newer. He proposed his new policies so that the simple people who were farmers or fishermen, they would gather and embrace him. They could understand his logic and his teachings because they were not full of knowledge and conditioning. Most of his followers could not read or write, but Jesus' presence was so alluring. He was a man of power, but only to those with open hearts and minds. A man full of conditioning feels he knows, and when one feels that he knows, then the door is shut. If all your roots or investments are buried in the nest, then flying out will seem impossible, or quite possibly against all you have been conditioned or taught. The same nest that gives you shelter is the same one keeping you from flying into the open sky. I'm breaking away from the text again. I just had to mention that, this is the root of the problem, is that religions were meant to help us to fly, to be, they're there as a nest, and we need to, one day learn how to leave that nest. And when the religion no longer allows that, then the religion becomes dead. So these religions are keeping you down. They're keeping you down by thoughts and ideas imposed by others when they don't even know themselves. But anyway, back to what John Lennon says. John Lennon sings, "I am just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round. I really love to watch them roll. No longer riding on the merry-go-round. I just had to let it go." How elegant a phrase. I just had to let it all go. When your heart says leave the nest and take flight, follow your heart, even at the price of offending your parents' beliefs. In our parent-child relationship, there is interdependence. Without the child, there would be no parent. Without the parent, there would be no child. In reality, every relationship goes much deeper. Everything is interdependent with everything else on our planet. Even the stars are interdependent with the darkness of space. Maybe it cannot be proved scientifically, but it is the eternal law of existence. Lao Tzu calls this law the Tao. One has only to accept this law and live within the essence of it to know it. If you can do that, then life does not have any friction. If you cannot, then a feeling of separation will form from it. Then your life will be full of friction. Let this be the criterion. If you are feeling friction in your life, then you are looking at something from the wrong perspective. It could never hurt to step back and look from another perspective. John is saying, look at life from a different perspective. No problems, just a life full of solutions. John Lennon was a man who came to the conclusion that there are no problems, only solutions. At a time when he wrote this song, he saw everyone else was creating fiction for themselves. Millions of souls who are just drops of ocean water, all feeling separate from the ocean. This separation is only an illusion, self-created when you live outside the law of the Tao. John was just a messenger with a beautiful voice and a beautiful soul. 4 stages of understanding and 3 levels of spiritual growth are ahead of the seeker before he can come to the point where he or she would just love to sit and watch the wheels go round and round. John Lennon sings again, "I am just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round. I really love to watch them roll." And I comment, half the ocean is on land. Millions of drops of water are not in the ocean, but they still exist. Every person and every animal is just a part of this massive ocean I call God. I should also say that every tree and every plant is part of this ocean I call God. Because we are not in the ocean, we feel separate from it. One day you will return to the ocean. Hopefully you will figure out how to do so before your physical death. If you stumble on the secret before you pass, you will discover that the separation was just an illusion. This is why Buddha has told his followers there is no God, only godliness. When the drop experiences the ocean experiences the drop. Logically, mathematically, it is not possible to comprehend, but I tell you the whole ocean can fit into one drop. It is possible that one single drop can know the whole ocean. One single drop of water can reflect the whole sky. In the meantime, before the realization happens, try to live in accordance with the laws of existence. The law of existence says live life exactly in the middle between both extremes and accept these extremes as one whole. When you combine the extremes and live in balance of what that combination will be, you will be able to know the truth. Yes, this will take some effort, but for the first few times, life will be a struggle until you get the hang of what this life balancing act is about. Yes, there will be those who do not understand because all they know is one stream or the other. You will not be a saint and you'll not be a sinner. What you'll be is wholesome. Every second you'll accept whatever happens as a learning experience. And with this attitude, life becomes a benediction. Life becomes holy. Every experience, whether good or bad, will be your chance to grow spiritually. The indicator of this balancing act is known as blissfulness. The more balanced your life is, the more bliss you will feel with your heart. When you have learned the ways of meditation, then thoughts are absent, bliss occurs. Even to the idiot who has very little thought process, bliss is found. Meditators are never idiots. Even if an idiot started meditating, his consciousness would expand, and eventually, even the idiot will gain wisdom, maybe even more so than the scholar. This is so because he starts with a clean slate, whereas the scholar is full of repeated knowledge. Remember this, thoughts need space, either past or future, in order to exist. No thought can exist in the present moment, only consciousness can exist in the present moment. One sweet moment at a time, your energies will raise and your soul will be levitated to the river surface, where heaven awaits you. When you pass from this life, and you found that you're facing another river, on the other side of this river will be heaven, and for some reason you are on the opposite shore. Now there are two types of people who will be able to cross this river. The first will be the devout devotee. He will be able to cross without sinking into the water and without being carried downstream with the currents of the raging river. He will be able to do this because trust is all he has ever known. With this trust he will levitate. His soul will be pure with no weight. He or she will be able to walk on the water surface. The second type of person will also be able to cross the river without sinking, only the reason will be different. The reason he too can cross, or I say he too or she too can cross, is because they have already been in this river. At one time they sunk below the river surface, but somehow they didn't panic. They learned the art of floating, if the art of floating can be learned. If you know how to float, then at some point someone said you could do it. You then trusted him or her and you tried it. Floating is the Tao, the way of levitation. Once the second type rose to the river surface, he floated on the water surface and crossed to the other shore. He found heaven right here in front of his eyes, on earth, just by relaxing and accepting the situation. For him or her, the river is already crossed. Then the river is crossed in this life, then a total relaxation of the being happens. Once you reach the other shore, you no longer care what happens in the future because you do not live in that fantasy anymore. When all others try to cross the river, they'll be whisked away by the river's current. And there are several thoughts or ideas of what happens when one is whisked away. Buddha's thought is that one is then reborn into another body and given a fresh start. One is given another chance to learn the art of floating. Floating while in this experience is what we call life. Listen to this Sufi story. It may help make more sense. And for those of you that don't know, the Sufis are a branch off of the Muslim faith, and I love the Sufis. They're very deep and understanding people. But here's our Sufi story. Once there was a very wise king. He was known to be very good to the people living under his rule. Because of his goodness, the people worked hard and were very loyal to him. His kingdom was vast, and the king was very rich, not only in monetary wealth, but in spiritual wealth as well. The king was so rich that once a week he would venture out into his kingdom on foot. For every innocent child or adult he passed, he would hand out a gold coin. He would then tell the receiver of the coin, "Thank you for being real, and blessing my kingdom with your love and joy, for it is the people like you who give meaning to me being a king." Within the kingdom there existed some shady followers as well, and one of these followers was a man who was a lawyer by profession. When this lawyer saw select people receiving the gold coins, he became jealous. He too wanted to receive a gold coin. So the next time the king came through the village passing out gold coins, he held his hand out. and to his dismay the king passed him by without even a slight glance. The lawyer was puzzled. He did not understand why he did not receive a coin. As lawyers are crafty and observant and cunning people, he watched the king and watched who was given the coins. Then he thought he had figured it out. It was mostly children or older people, and sometimes an occasional bum who received the gift. So he decided he would try to trick the king. He dressed up in children's clothes, and when the king came, he held his hand out, and still the king would not give him a gold coin. At least this time the king did look at him, but he just shook his head and passed him up. The lawyer became outraged. This drove him to want the gift even more, so he decided to be even craftier. He studied hard and noticed all the receivers of the gifts were all simple, innocent people. So the crafty lawyer studied and practiced being innocent and simple looking. Then the next time the king came through the village, he tried to look simple and innocent, but still the king noticed who he was. So this time the king said to him, "Are you not the lawyer from my province?" The lawyer said yes, and the king said, "I'm sorry, I have no gift for you." This still did not stop the lawyer. He tried and tried every time the king came to visit the innocent ones. Every time the king would instantly notice whom the lawyer really was. Then, when the lawyer was all out of tricks, he saw the king heading his way, and across the street he noticed a mortician's open casket for sale. The lawyer jumped into the casket and pretended to be dead. Then when the king came upon him, the king looked at him and threw him a coin into the casket, saying, knowing well that the lawyer was not really dead, he said to him, "For your kind, only when you are dead will you get the gift." Then the lawyer replied, "This is good enough for me," and took the gold coin. The Sufis have such beautiful stories, and this one is pure gold for the spiritual seeker. The king in this story is God, and the innocent people, young and old, and every age in between, all receive the gift when they are still alive. The gift of the gold coin represents enlightenment, and the lawyer represents every type of soul who thinks the gift can be earned or given by practicing innocence or by being clever. And I have nothing against lawyers. They serve a purpose. Innocence cannot be cultivated. However, you were born innocent. Then life happened. You picked up bad habits, but all is not lost. Those who are the mystics in the world have indicated a way towards another innocence. Childhood innocence is the first gift. I suspect your spirit, before it entered into your body, matured in the spirit world. And when it matured enough, God sent you back into life. Then as you grew up passing through the years, some matured in emotional ways, and some of you only matured in physical ways, while others matured intellectually, and some matured spiritually. I don't know if I'm the first to say this, but as I see it, you must mature in all four aspects, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, in order to grow and in order to know real maturity. In order for your soul to crack the shell you have been living in your whole life. In the East, they call this shell the ego. The second innocence can neither be earned nor instilled. I would even dare to say it cannot be attained. What can be done is that you can mature. And when your maturity can no longer be contained, when your soul presses against the shell so hard that it cracks, then you will know the second innocence. It will be like you have never seen the sky before. It will be like taking a breath for the first time. As John Lennon says, no longer riding on the merry-go-round. I just had to let it all go. In the beginning of this book, I mentioned how time seems to be working against you, and it is not. In every way, time is working for you. The only way to be able to comprehend this is to go deeper into how it is working for you. When I wrote the book Songs of the Buddhas, one of the key things I wished to get across was that mystics have now and have always known the truth before science discovers it. I believe science will soon discover many things, and one of those things will be ways to know more about the unknown, about the unmanifested, because there are two parts to life. Life is the first part, and death is the second part. But up to this point in our history, and when I say our history, I mean the last 5,000 years, the only link we have been able to make with the unknowable has been through the mystics. These mystics all have one thing in common. They all have embraced the unknown, or the non-being side. They have all faced the abyss. And when they did, they faced it with love and courage. Just as our astronauts and scientists have faced the space in our universe, these mystics have faced the inner world where life meets death. Inside of us is both life and death. New cells are being created and old cells are dying. You will live and you will die. These are the only two certainties. All else is uncertain. The mystics realize this and embrace death rather than looking at it as an enemy. Almost all of humanity looks at death as the enemy, and it is not. It is because of death that life can exist. Death only takes away that which is burdened towards your spiritual path. To understand this, we'll need to grasp the bigger picture. Time started, or the conception of time started recently, but time did start with the Big Bang. I say this possibly because looking into deep space, we have just now discovered millions of galaxies beyond our sight. And it is possible that if life existed on those planets and those galaxies, and they had a Hubble scope pointed into their deep space, not in our direction, but opposite from us, they might also see and discover millions of more galaxies. And this could go on for eternity. So possibly time started with a Big Bang, but this is not important. What is important is that time and space are tied together, and that makes them relative. And this relativity gives meaning because what we know right now is that everything is moving forward at a certain speed. The speed at which the planet spins determines how fast we age. Einstein first discovered this theory of relativity around 1907. To understand this relativity, I think about skydiving. The concept of relativity and its relationship to time became quite clear. What's known as terminal velocity is the maximum speed at which you can part the air as you fall through the sky. The belly to earth position is 120 miles per hour. It is because of this maximum speed that the skydiver is able to have a couple minutes of free fall. If there were no maximum speed, you would be going faster and faster, and a parachute would shred under the compounding force of that speed. When I was jumping, I had these dreams of leaving the plane as usual. But in my dreams, terminal velocity doesn't exist sometimes. I would leave the plane and in a split second I would hit the ground. And dreams like those can give you an appreciation for time and relativity. I realize time is working for me. It is because of time and its relativity to space, the skydiver has time for free fall and time to pull his parachute and land it safely. The skydiver has time created by the airplane's altitude. Our days are determined by the time it takes for the Earth to revolve around itself, and our years are determined by the time we revolve around the sun. All of these cycles have given our planet time to mature, and we also have been given time to mature. If you can live with this positive perspective, you'll be able to understand how time is working for you and not against you. It only appears to work against you because of gravity. Gravity determines not only the speed at which you fall to the ground, it also pulls against your body over the whole course of your life. Nonetheless, the pull of gravity did not stop us from standing upright. We are only half of a chromosome away from a chimpanzee, but in that minute difference, we have gained consciousness. The enlightened souls have a larger perspective of life and death, and they accepted life and death in its eternity. When these mystics accepted the wholeness, then they lived not in time, but in the present moment. Maybe I should not say present moment because that implies a tense, and there is no tense in life when it is lived in moment to moment. It is just a continuum of moments, not a past moment or a future moment. Every moment is a new moment with the freshness of life. Life lived in totality deletes the tension of time. Therefore, only in this totality will you be able to relax, and relax totally. Anything done partially will never fulfill your soul. A part of your soul will feel this tension of unfulfillment. A mystic realizes this connection of living fully in the present moment, and this is where the magic happens. His or her soul does not feel the weight of gravity. His soul is being continually lifted towards the mountain peaks of love. I am not saying the mystics did not age, their bodies aged, but when they accepted the whole, their souls became fresh as newborn babies, and they became childlike. And this is how Lao Tzu got his name, Old Child. or old fool. The same happened to Jesus. He became born again, or you could say a Buddha was enlightened. They all mean the same thing. The mystics have found a way to get off the merry-go-round. They just let it all go. And this is a good stopping point for now. But anyway, now we're all becoming more and more aware and clear about John Lennon's message in this song, Watching the Wheels, and how beautiful it is. What a beautiful song. What a beautiful soul that wrote this song and gave it to us. So I leave you with these thoughts of Taoism and learning to be whole, to accept the dielectrics as not just separate entities like good and evil are separate from each other, but to accept them as one part of one whole and carry that in and make that understanding your life. Because you were put on this world to be born, to be raised in a nest, and then one day to leave that nest and fly into the open sky. To know the sky is to know love. To know love is to know God. But anyway, thank you again for joining me. Y'all take care now.